Kene koiri, he ino yakune, aroha kia matau. Anaki ki amai mahaka, iro to ikene Yariki
Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora anō. Here we go again. Anyway, this time, I've heard from some of yous and you've private messaged me and said that my videos have been replaced with other videos. So, yeah, all sorts of things happening with my connection. But hoi anō, we will soldier on, okay? So I'm just gonna, like I said about that Waiata Hemene, it's a beautiful one, and it's the one my papa always sang, and it makes me feel close to him when I hear it. But I'm gonna put up the video in regards to the glosses coming off, and I'll mute and let's watch this video together and let's kōrero about it as well. Should polluters pay? Which is what's come out through the whole Three Waters issue as well. So we might as well have a kōrero about that. So anyway, I'm going to mute myself and share this next video from Sky News.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been the celebrity leader of the international left. I mean, never mind what she's actually doing to her country, her economy, race relations there. Just look at her style, look at her smile, look at her youth, her wokeness. In fact, the ABC's new host of its, marquee 7:30 program, Sarah Ferguson, she's supposedly a Rottweiler in interviews, right? Snap, 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 snap. She simpered all over Ardern when she interviewed the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago. Get a bucket, because check what I'm going to show you.
That was quite a speech that you gave a couple of months ago to this year's graduates at Harvard University.
Sure. I would just point out our relatively low levels of debt, historically low unemployment, and good solid GDP growth. But apart from that, we are experiencing CPI increases.
Thank you very much, Tourism New Zealand. But I just want to talk about the phenomenon of Jacinda Ardern. It's very unusual for a Prime Minister of a small Pacific country to become a global celebrity. How do you explain the sustained interest in you?
Tell me how wonderful you are. How do you manage it? I mean, seriously. But there are signs that the Jacinda Ardern gloss is sure wearing off fast back home in New Zealand. Joining me is Dr. Oliver Hartwich, Executive Director of the New Zealand Initiative, to tell us what you wouldn't have learned from the 7:30. Dr. Hartwich, thank you for your time. In Australia, we think we've got a huge problem with inflation, 5.1%. We're really worried. New Zealand's inflation is not 5.1%, it's 7.3%. Why is that?
You're right, Andrew. It's 7.3, and that's just the official figure. It would have been probably 7.8 or maybe 8% had the government not delivered a temporary tax cut for fuel. So we are now looking at an inflation scenario for New Zealand, which is among the highest in the world. And you asked, why is that? Well, two factors. One, the government is spending a lot, and it has actually spent a lot more since COVID. But the other factor, probably the even bigger factor, is our Reserve Bank, because over the last couple of years, the Reserve Bank has more than tripled its monetary base from a level of just under 15 billion New Zealand dollars in February 2020 to about 53, 54 billion dollars today. So this is quite an aggressive stance by our Reserve Bank. We initially had a quantitative easing program, that is money printing, of up to 100 billion. They stopped midway through because they could already see that they're overstimulating the economy, but they're still stimulating the banks. They are still doing a so-called funding for lending program, and that means they're flooding markets with cash. That cash is trickling through the economy, and that's why we have this inflation in New Zealand.
It sounds like our Reserve Bank on steroids, the way you describe it. And how's the economy travelling? I mentioned the inflation rate. What other factors are you seeing, data that you're seeing that suggests that you might be in a bit of trouble there?
Well, if you listen to our government, they will tell you that we are currently looking at an economy in full employment because our unemployment rate is very low. We have 3.3% unemployment. However, things are not as good as they seem, because actually what you're looking at here is a crippled labor market, because what we have done is actually we have reduced the labor supply because we are no longer letting people into the country. Well, it's just starting now after 2 years of being a hermit kingdom. But at the same time, we have also reduced the labor supply domestically because we are no longer actually forcing beneficiaries, job seekers back into the labor market. And on top of all of that, of course, the government is crowding out the labor market by employing more people. So over the last 5 years, we have seen a growth in public sector employment of more than 50,000 people. And if you put all of these factors together, basically what you have is you have an economy that looks like in full employment, but actually it is a very distorted labor market. It doesn't look good. And of course, we now have a phenomenon where migrants, potential migrants, no longer want to come to New Zealand because we make it very hard for migrants to even get their visas processed, let alone get permanent residence in New Zealand. So they actually might be better off moving to Australia if you're a nurse, for example, and trying to settle in New Zealand. At the same time, we had an opinion poll revealing just a couple of weeks ago that now 1 in 5 New Zealanders are considering leaving the country, migrating, especially to Australia. So currently we're looking at 200,000 New Zealanders who already say they've made the decision, they want to leave the country, and about 1 million New Zealanders who are currently considering leaving the country. So you can tell, just looking at these figures, that something is not quite right in New Zealand.
Well, I find it absolutely astonishing that Jacinda Ardern hires 50,000 more public servants, taking workers away from more productive jobs. Plus, you've still got the number of people on benefits increasing, and so's the number of people on job seeker support. It's so astonishing. And how's it being reflected in the polls?
Well, if you look at the polls for the first time actually in years, a majority of New Zealanders now say that the country is traveling in the wrong direction. Actually, during the first COVID lockdown in March 2020, 77% of New Zealanders said the country is going in the right direction, believe it or not. That has gone down to just 36%, and now 50% of New Zealanders say this country is traveling in the wrong direction for a number of reasons. I mean, you've mentioned the economy, but there are other issues as well. There is the debate over core governance, which basically means giving Maori more rights or different rights. And so New Zealanders feel that something is brewing up in this country, and they're increasingly unhappy. And if you look at the polls, it is reflected in the most recent polls. We had majorities for the opposition. We still have about 14 months to go to next year's election, but the way the country is traveling with the economic crisis on the horizon and building up, the next year's election is the opposition's to lose.
Yes, well, I think that the race politics, which we've covered a few times, you won't find a coverage of that in the ABC, is very seriously worrying. Oliver Hartwich, thank you so much indeed for your time.
See lots more refreshing looks for winter on a budget at BB&B. Home coat duvet cover sets now $39.
Oh, kia ora. So they leave that final video with race politics, which I want to tease out a bit more. So the gloss is coming off, and yet she's a mega star overseas. And we saw that with her trip to the US and they just adore her. So you can imagine, after being our Prime Minister, that she'll have quite a substantial role to play in the United Nations, I guess, following in the footsteps of her own mentor, Helen Clark. But any questions to come out of that particular video? I wanted to put that up. Just why I find that interesting is we have mainstream media in Australia reporting on what our mainstream media should be. So our mainstream media have made themselves defunct, actually, and we're getting more realistic, journalistic, even investigative journalism coming out of the Platform and the Daily Examiner here in Aotearoa. I mean, they're taking the place of our mainstream media, and mainstream media, including, I think, Māori mainstream media, need to be concerned, because if people don't trust you as a media outlet, then what, you're getting paid by the government. When all that money runs out, then what? Because you've lost your credibility here in New Zealand, Aotearoa. Now, the other issue is, I don't know if you've been onto my page. So I just want to read out a statement that I've put up on my page. So I'm standing for Hamilton City Council on 3 ticket items. One is equity. I'm aware that we have the have and have not communities within Hamilton City Council. So what I've seen, and this is my personal opinion, but what I've seen living in the northern area of Hamilton, that a lot of the resources are sucked from the poorer communities into the more affluent communities. And so, they have flashlights, flash footpaths, flash roads, flash parks, flash libraries, flash sports event centres, and we can barely get our roads fixed over here, and barely get investment into our own park. So I back onto a park, and what they did is they downgraded our park rather than upgraded it, and then they built all these swanky parks around in the more affluent areas. So the issue of equity is important. If we want our communities to thrive, we cannot have the haves and have-not communities, and that's really based on the prioritisation of where funding goes. So equity is a big issue, but the big ticket item for me is the 3 waters. So I'm going to read out to you my statement, and you can check it out on my page. So 3 waters. I will fight to keep local assets in local hands. 3 waters has divided the country and our communities. I will fight to keep local assets in local hands. Local community assets should be under local community control. I mean, whānau, that's a given, right? Sorry, I've got a lolly in my mouth and I'm really conscious. Hang on. Excuse me. I was hoping to have chewed it before the video was up, but anyway, I'll carry on with my statement. Following the water contamination crisis in Havelock North in 2016, the Labour government embarked on a full-scale water reform. 3 waters reform included wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water. Through the introduction of Water Quality Bill in 2020, compliance legislation made it impossible for councils to meet the new water standards. Ratepayers own all water infrastructure paid to over generations. The government says council will own these assets. So the government says the council will own these assets under the new regime. However, that is small comfort if councils lose total control of those assets. There is no power to remove appointed directors and managers. what would normally be the responsibility of elected members become the responsibility of unelected members, managing our most important resource. On the 15th of November 2021, so that's not too long ago, whānau, the Health Fluoridation and Drinking Water Amendment Bill passed into legislation enabling the Director General of Health, who is Dr. Bloomfield currently, to direct any local authority to add fluoride to their drinking water supply. Local communities should determine what goes into their drinking water, not an unelected official. This is a further erosion of our democratic rights, which opens the door to allow future governments to inoculate our water with other pathogens or contaminants under the guise of public health. It's a really important issue to raise, whānau. I'll read that sentence out again. This is a further erosion of our democratic rights, which opens the door to allow future governments to inoculate our water with other pathogens and contaminants under the guise of public health. Local governments can give effect to the Treaty of Waitangi. They are already compelled to do that under current legislation. 78 local authorities are in a better position than 4 mega entities to engage with their local mana whenua groups, including whānau, hapu and iwi. 78 local authorities are in a better position to create enabling mechanisms which will provide for whānau, hapu and iwi. 78 local authorities are in a better position to engage with mana whenua groups with respect to the provision of water services. 78 local authorities are in a better position to provide for the expression of te mana o te wai, enabling mechanisms which may include iwi management plans, cultural impact statements, and mana whenua statements. All these mechanisms can be incorporated into current legislations, ensuring local assets stay in local hands. So that's my little blurb, whānau, on my page. And I do have an equity one up there, and you can read it at your own perusal. But this is a biggie. Now, why am I so adamant about retaining the control of our assets in local communities? Because of the fact that I don't believe someone in Wellington knows better than us in our own communities on what's best for us, right? And I don't believe that an unelected official should be given that sort of a mana. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this where, with the WHO, the FDA, the NHIs, and even the WEF, these unelected institutes are having so much influence on our democracy, on other sovereign state democracies. So we're getting it at an international level, and we're getting it at a national level, and we've just got to be aware of that, whānau? Now, I've always been, and I am pro-Māori, and because I am Māori, right? And I've been a Māori activist since I can remember. Here's the thing, I've also worked in the local government space, and that's where my expertise actually comes from. So I think I can talk with a bit of understanding of the dynamics within local government. What concerns me about these 4 mega entities is we have smaller iwi, right? We have hapu, right? We have hapu and iwi around the motu. Now, hapu will not get a say in these mega entities, probably, and I'm just assuming, but it's my own opinion, and quite happy to debate that opinion, is that if the more larger, the more resource, the more the iwi that have more capacity to engage at that level will probably get the lion's share of say in those four. Remember, there's only four mega entities, whereas within local government, and I know that there have been some negative engagements as well in local government, but it's up to those local government, and it's up to Te Ao Māori to engage ourselves. And a lot more Māori are standing. We have Māori constituent seats now, and we're having a huge amount of Māori. They're putting their hands up for mayor as well, and that's really, really exciting. Now, I believe that local government or our 78 local authorities are in a better position to engage with their local hapu or mana whenua or marae even, because sometimes it's marae specific, or whānau, sometimes it's even whānau specific, but we're better to engage at whānau, hapu and whānau, marae, hapu and iwi level, at that local level. I don't have confidence that we can do it with those four mega entities, that we can engage at grassroots level, unless we keep the mana at a local government level. And that is my perspective on that. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts, whānau. So thank you for tuning in. And sorry about that first video. It's gone, so I've had to redo this video again and redo that particular video. But I'm going to go through and see if I can bring up your comments. What does Mata have to say? Wait for it. They are catering to Māori and won't let us do low wages for our migrant whānau. The old white man winging again. Okay, that's an interesting whakaaro, Mata. Thank you for sharing. Tina says it's called genocide. Okay, I am going back a bit, so it might be you are responding to the actual video. And I brought up that race politics because here's the thing too, whānau, and this is where race politics actually comes into full. When we're looking and talking about co-governance has been around for a long time at a local government level, right? And just remember, with the three waters, Māori's input is only at a regional level, right? At that four mega entity level. Above that, there are still boards and still the government. So, like some are saying, which I think is misinformation and quite deceiving, that Māori have all the say with the three waters. That is just absolutely not true. What I see with the three waters is, yes, it's bringing Māori more, I guess, into the decision-making process, but it isn't any more than what's already happening now. I'm not convinced. I actually wonder if actually a lot more of our whānau, like whānau, marae and hapu, will be usurped through this process, because we haven't considered the ramifications. Whereas at a local government level, like the smaller councils, like for example, South Waikato District Council or Waikato District Council, not saying that they're small, but we've got the city council as well. We've got Matamata Piako. All of those smaller councils, they deal with mana whenua on a daily basis. They know who their mana whenua are. And it's not necessarily the iwi. They could be dealing with hapu, or even a cluster of hapu, or a cluster of marae, or even a cluster of whānau. So within those smaller councils, you're dealing with mana whenua groups. I don't know, and I don't believe, hence the reason why I don't support it, that those 4 mega entities are going to be able to deal with mana whenua on the ground, the way that local government deal with mana whenua on the ground. So that's my major concern in that space. What does Val have to say? They have forced workers to move from one workforce into other areas. They reduce nurses and other health professionals, then cry that there is a shortage of staff. Drop the mandates and pay what they are worth. I mean, those are 2 good points, Val. Drop the mandates for one and allow everyone back into work, because we've got a crisis, a workforce crisis now, and pay people what they're worth. So here's the thing: when you bring migrants into our country, it forces the value of your labour down. That's what bringing migrants into our country does. Opportunity for those migrants and those families, and I'm talking about our whānau from the Pacifica as well, still technically migrants, even though from a Polynesian perspective, we're all connected. But from a national perspective, they're still migrants. They're still, we are tangata te riti, we are tangata whenua, and everyone else is tangata te riti. So by bringing in a lot of migrants, we are forcing our labour force down. By mandating and holding on to those mandates, we're not enabling those that are capable to go back to work, and there's issues around beneficiaries working as well, and that I think that's another corridor for another life as well, because we don't want to get into slave labour as well, so we just got to be really, really careful. And I remember when I was part of the Opportunities Party, that Gareth Morgan said that if you can't afford to pay your employees a living wage, then you shouldn't be owning a business. And that has sat with me. And when we were in business, when me and my husband were in business, we actually paid our employees more than we paid ourselves. That's how much respect we had for our employee. Without good employees, then your business is nothing, actually. And that's coming from someone who's been in business for many years. So thank you all for your comments. Some really long comments there as well. I'm going to put up Daniel's comment. He said, I'll be leaving too, but can't leave my parents on their own. And the wait for seeing a surgeon about a hernia is past 15 months for me now. So I haven't had enough trouble from our underperforming health system. No treatment for a concussion I received from a beating meant no assistance from ACC for me, even though it was the hospital's fault. Oh gosh, that's shocking, Daniel. So we've all got our experiences of the health system on fire, really, and we've got a government in denial and a minister in denial. And the minister, I don't know if he's used our public service, our health system in the last few weeks, but I can tell you from experience that our health system is in crisis. They will give us the best care that they can under the circumstances, which means it's not the best care that we're entitled to. It's the best care that they can give under the circumstances. Our health system is failing us. Our government is failing us. And I guess that's what Sky News is trying to highlight. I mean, they just brought up a couple of points, but we know that there are many issues within the justice system as well. They're short-staffed there, and we had human rights problems prior to COVID, and I know that there are many untold stories about what's going on in corrections as well. And we've been all in survival mode, And so some of you, if there's any whānau out there that have got some stories to share about human rights breaches and correction over the last year, please let me know, private message me, and we can organise an interview. I can interview you on my live and you can have an opportunity to share your story. Now, thank you, Nicole and Katrina. Okay, what do you have to say, my friend? Okay, Jill says, sounds very much like the WEF's global policy, but on a smaller scale, giving power to unelected officials to govern our resources and our human rights. And that is great how great minds think alike, because that is taku whakaaro. I had the same whakaaro that, that global policy or white paper of WEF has infiltrated all the way down to the fact where we are mirroring what the WEF want at a global level. And these are warning signs, whānau? These are warning signs. So they want a centralised power in Wellington. They want an unelected official to decide what we should be deciding, to decide what we should decide at a local government level. Now, that's what they want to do on a global scale. So look in the mirror on a global scale. They want unelected officials, like I said, in WHO, FDA, NHI, all those unelected officials to make decisions that impact on people's human rights, people's sovereignty. And so we've got to stop it in its track and expose it for what it is. And it is an erosion of our democracy. Now, what else? What does Rose have to say? Taku Taimoana is a prime example for this fire. It is a trickery to extinguish customary ownership and whānau who are appointed at Crown level. So, I mean, really the mana sits with mana whenua, eh? The mana doesn't sit within an entity. We hear the term coin co-governance. Well, when you look at co-governance, you're looking at what the treaty, you're looking at the manifestation of te tiriti or waitangi when you're talking about co-governance. And like I said, co-governance has been around for a long time. Māori have an inherent obligation to take care of Papatūānuku. We have an inherent obligation. You can't go wrong by having Māori as kaitiaki. And I've worked in this space for many, many years, and co-governance has become a dirty word. You've seen that on Sky News. When mainstream and when tangata te riti, so that's everyone bar mana whenua, right? When tangata te riti feel that something's been taken from them, then it's Māori and co-governance become an ugly word. And it's because, and like I've stated in other lives, we have not been taught our history. If we have not been taught our history, then you're only capturing what you know now. And the media, and there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation out there in regards to our history. We have been fighting for equal footing, equity for 200 years. For 200 years, right? And so when you hear so with co-governance, you've got local government involved, you've got other stakeholders involved, you've got government departments involved, and you've got mana whenua involved. That's co-governance. That's a collective of the community. And if you read my equity Actually, I'm going to read it to you, so I don't have to explain it. I know some of you have looked at it. I've read out my Three Waters statement. Now I'm going to read you out my empower people and communities. So I will bring equity back to the decision making by empowering individual families and communities to create better lives for themselves. Each community have different needs and priorities. I want to see Hamilton City Council create opportunities for our diverse communities, and that the programs funded are right for those communities. I want to see these communities share the decisions with elected and unelected policymakers. Now that, whānau, in itself is co-governance. So don't be afraid, because what we're saying is let's empower the whole community to be part of the decision making. Okay, so anyway, I'll carry on, and I'm not just talking about Te Ao Māori. I'm talking about the whole community. I want to see these communities share the decision making with elected and unelected policymakers. Mana whenua have an important role to play, and as part of our community, I would advocate to establish joint decision making processes which puts our community in the driver's seat. Whānau, that is co-governance. So again, don't be afraid of that word co-governance, because we're trying to empower the whole community, right? I'll carry on. This will ensure ratepayers' money is not captured where we create communities of the haves and have-nots. I will advocate to utilise data and local knowledge to inform delivery and then assess the impact of empowered communities. So how are you going to find out if those communities have been, one, funded right, if they've been empowered? You do an assessment and you get those communities to give their assessment. We want to sort out the gang problem. Well, let's go to the gang community and ask them what they think the solutions are. Don't let someone in Wellington or someone behind a desk who's never engaged with gangs or even spoken to a gang member decide on what's best for a gang member. Let's go to our migrant communities and ask our migrant communities what they think is best for them. Let's not have someone sitting behind a desk that doesn't have that experience or knowledge of those migrants making that decision. Whānau, that is co-governance. Okay, I'll carry on. Empowering communities are thriving communities. By working with central government, we can close the gap on health, housing, justice, education, and employment that will provide more opportunities for our diverse communities. By creating partnerships with governments, private sector, and mana whenua, we can restore balance within our communities. We can co-design our future. An empowered community is an empowered person. An empowered person is an empowered community. So, koina, that's my kōrero. So that's on the equity space, and then on the Three Waters space. And the next one that I'll talk about is social housing, which is another biggie. So those are the three ticket items that I am running in Hamilton City Council. Now, here's the thing, whānau. People are saying, oh, you're running for local government as well as central government. You bet your bottom dollar I am. One, my area of expertise actually is in local government. Two, I think that central government needs to be decentralized, and I think more mana needs to come back to our local communities, and we'll leave government for the to run the utilities of our country, but I believe that there has to be a power shift back to local communities, and that's why I'm running in both, because I see the importance and the empowerment of people and communities actually sit with local government. So that's my kōrero for now, whānau. That's I'm just going to quickly read a couple of comments before I go. Daniel says, Benny Petra in a essay that don't make sense, mate. Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry, whānau, I'm just bringing up comments. What does Val say? Since Jacinda is the world's poster girl, especially in America, who am I to stop them from wanting to have her? True, eh? I will, from the kindness of my heart, hold that door open for her to go, and America can have her and keep her. Ka pai e hoa. What does Matthew say? Outdoors party. I'm seriously thinking about going back to Perth. I came back to New Zealand mid-2019, just prior to COVID, for my kids. This country is turning to crap real fast. No future here. Of nothing is done ASAP. Oh, that's really sad, Matthew. I hope you don't. Your children and then your future grandchildren will need you. And if we all decide to leave, then there's no one here. There's no ahika left, eh? So I hope I've shared enough to inspire you to even if you're not happy, whānau, if you're not happy, stand for your local government, stand for central government. It's the only way we can do it. We need to put people that don't have agendas on their table or in their back pocket, and we need ordinary New Zealanders to run our country, because a lot of these governments have lost touch with ordinary New Zealanders. So yeah, don't be disheartened. Put your hand up, and if you're not happy, then make a difference and make a change for your whānau. Okay, whānau, I'm going to love you and leave yous. Thank you for joining in. And sorry about the hiccup before, but we got there in the end, and expect more hiccups in the future with my lives, because we know that I'm being censored left, right and centre. Kei te pai. Also knowing that people are saying their notifications are dropping off, you got to go back in all the time, whānau, and unclick and click like again and follow me. Unfortunately, that's what we have to do, because everyone's dropping off. So thank you again for tuning in. Kia pai tō rā. Have an awesome day. Love yous all. Ka kite anō. Kia ora.